It's time for munching and mating in the Macrocystis, or giant kelp, with your host, Dr. Bill Bushing. One of the best things about my job is that when I go to the office, I don't have to wear a tie with my suit. Wetsuit, that is. Hi, I'm Dr. Bill. Today we are going to look at the wrasse family, Labridae, which is the second largest group of marine fish, with approximately 500 species. We will focus on the three common representatives in the temperate waters off Southern California: the sheephead, rock wrasse, and senorita. Wrasses are more commonly found in tropical and subtropical waters. However, here in our waters we have several temperate water representatives. The largest is the California sheephead, known scientifically as Semicocyphus pulcher, and they are known as Vieja de California in Mexico. The sheephead's geographic range is from Monterey Bay south to Cabo San Lucas, with an isolated population in the northern Gulf of California. They are most common from Point Conception south. In the southern Gulf or Sea of Cortez, a wrasse relative, the Mexican hogfish, is the common species and fills essentially the same ecological role. Their habitat preference is generally listed as rocky bottom areas including reefs, especially where kelp forests are present. However, this species may also be common over sandy bottoms where it, especially the smaller females, often feeds. They are generally reported as common to depths of 180 feet. Juveniles are rarely seen below 100 feet. Large males of this species may live over 50 years and reach lengths of 3 feet and a weight of 35 pounds. Most older individuals are in the 20 to 21 year range and about 18 inches long. Females are smaller for the following reason. Sheephead, like many other wrasses, are all born female. They are sequential hermaphrodites, beginning life as females and later transitioning to males. The sexually immature juveniles are a bright red to orange in color and have a white stripe running the length of their body. They also have characteristic black spots on their fins. This coloration is retained until they are about 4 inches long. The mature female is pinkish to reddish in color with a white chin. At depth, the lack of red light may make them appear pale gray, but dive or video lights usually bring out the color. I often see this interesting mottled pattern in the females when they are feeding or resting. It usually fades and disappears quickly as they swim away. In our waters, they begin reaching sexual maturity between 5 and 6 years. But at Guadalupe Island off Baja, it may occur at half that age. Some sources state 50% of the females are sexually mature at 8 to 12 inches in length. The transition from female to male occurs at an age that is dependent on factors like local food resources, water temperature, and other environmental factors. The sex ratio in the population and the size of the existing males are probably other factors. The size at which this transition occurs is usually between 10 and 14 inches, and at an age of anywhere from 8 to 14 years. However, one source indicated it can occur as early as 5 years of age. Although it was previously believed that only a percentage of the population transitioned to being male, current thinking is that almost all of them will if they live long enough. Rapidly growing individuals change sex early, whereas those that grow slowly may not change at all. The mature male or terminal phase is dark gray to black at the head and tail end of the body, with a white, pinkish, or red band in the middle. The canine teeth are very prominent in individuals longer than 12 inches. Large males may have a well-developed fleshy bump on their head. These wrasses are generally solitary and slow-moving. Here you see males swimming by sculling with their pectoral fins rather than using their tail. Sheephead are among the top carnivores in reef and kelp forest ecosystems. They often feed on invertebrates with hard shells or exoskeletons. These include sea urchins, lobster, shrimp, crabs, and various mollusks such as clams and snails. Other menu items include barnacles, mussels, worms, and octopus. Even starfish and sea cucumbers may become prey. This one has a brittle star in its mouth, and others are seen swimming with urchin spines that look like toothpicks. Females, and to a lesser extent males, are often seen digging in the sand for their food. However, most males seem to prefer hunting over the reef itself. Sheephead are also an occasional cleaner species, picking external or ectoparasites off the bodies of other fish. I usually see the smaller juveniles and females cleaning giant sea bass. Of course, they have to be very careful not to approach too close to the head region, or they might become a meal themselves. Other potential carnivores include seals and sea lions, cormorants, and bald eagles. These wrasses are a diurnal species, active only during daylight. As nightfall approaches, they retire to shelters in the rocks such as caves or crevices to sleep. Occasionally, I see them resting during daylight. Perhaps they just needed a nap. Another prey species, the black or coronado sea urchin, has adapted its activity schedule to avoid predation by sheephead. When the sheephead retire for the night, the black urchins come out of their hiding places to forage out in the open nearby. Large males hold territories which they defend through an interaction with other males known as mouth fighting. This highly ritualized behavior rarely results in any harm to either fish. Although at the end of this successful defense, the winner does nip at the loser. In case you thought this was just a case of male hormones acting up, females also engage in it, as well as small juveniles. These wrasse spawn during summer. Dr. Milton Love reports that here off Catalina Island, they spawn from June through September. Sex ratios in the population may range from about equal numbers to a 3-to-1 dominance by females. The ladies are said to gather in the area about an hour before and spawn shortly before sunset. The male approaches each female, makes side-to-side contact with her, and leads her off in a circle. If smaller males attempt to court a female within the territory, the dominant male chases them away. The sex change from female to male usually occurs in the winter after mating season is over. One report suggests females may spawn nearly every day, releasing nearly 6,000 eggs per event. The eggs are pelagic, drifting in the open water as they develop. They hatch into planktonic larvae, and these larvae drift for about 40 to 80 days before settling out, which they do at a size of about half an inch. Since adult sheephead are considered reef-associated, meaning they generally remain within the vicinity of the same reef, the species is dependent on the currents for dispersal of their young. One study incorporating a wide geographical area found sheephead densities of 16 to nearly 300 fish per acre in most areas. Their density is much higher in the southern Channel Islands, where about 600 fish per acre is the norm. The high numbers in the islands is one of several reasons why sea urchin populations here do not skyrocket and destroy the kelp forests, turning them into urchin barrens. Because of their relatively limited home range, intensive fishing activity can significantly affect their local populations. For many years, anglers did not consider sheephead a desirable catch, at least until the numbers of more preferred species dropped from overfishing. However, sheephead bones are fairly common in the middens of the Native Americans in our region, especially out on the Channel Islands. Recreational spearfishers largely target the males, and this may affect the sex ratio balance in some areas. Here you see an undersized male sheephead shot and left to die by divers with newly purchased spears. Such behavior is inexcusable. Good spearfishers know the size limits and would not do this. Fishing pressure on this species has increased over the last decade or so, and the catch has declined. Part of the increased exploitation of this wrasse is due to the demand for the live fish trade. Sheephead caught in this largely trap-based fishery are sold live in Asian markets and restaurants. Unfortunately, this fishery targets sheephead before they reach reproductive age, so this will certainly impact their populations on heavily fished reefs. Another wrasse common in Southern California waters is the rock wrasse, Halichoeres semicinctus. These cigar-shaped fish have large scales and prominent buck teeth. Their color and markings are dependent not only on age and gender, but can change to some extent over a short time. Small juveniles are green in color, becoming an orange-brown with a white stripe on the back, another on each side, and 2 black spots on the dorsal fins. There may also be black flecks on the scales. Like the sheephead, all are born female. When mature, they are green or green-orange and may have faint bars on the side or retain the black flecks of the juvenile stage. These black spots may seem to form a dark stripe along the upper body. The terminal phase males have a vertical black bar behind the base of their yellow pectoral fins. Rock wrasse are found from Point Conception to Guadalupe Island off Baja and into the northern Gulf of California, or Sea of Cortez. Although they are most often seen south of Palos Verdes, during El Niño events, larvae may drift further north and the young be seen in the Santa Barbara area. Although usually observed between 10 and 50 feet, they may be found as deep as 130. Their preferred habitat is usually rocky reefs or boulders with sand nearby. Rock wrasses are also active during daylight. Strictly diurnal, they shelter in algae about 20 minutes after sunset and don't reemerge until just before sunrise. They are generally solitary individuals, although some may pair up. The tiny young may school for protection. Rock wrasse generally feed on bottom-dwelling invertebrates like snails, crustaceans including crabs and amphipods, bryozoa, and a bit of algae for a balanced diet. They crush the hard shells and exoskeletons using their pharyngeal teeth. Note how the rock wrasse seems to hide behind the rubber-lipped sea perch as it searches for food. This method is often used by tropical wrasses and other predatory fish who shadow behind fish that are not threatening to the wrasse's prey. This individual appears to have been attacked by a predator based on the wounds near its tail. Although some have stated this species rarely cleans parasites and diseased tissue off other fish, I have observed cleaning behavior by rock wrasse on countless occasions. Here you see rock wrasse cleaning half-moon near the bottom. Note how the half-moon position themselves and how the wrasse looks them over for tidbits. I often see rock wrasse, both males and females, cleaning Garibaldi in mid-water. I have also observed them picking various tidbits off topsmelt. As for their own parasites and itches, rock wrasse will rub their bodies against hard substrate. I have also seen Senorita clean them. Rock wrasse reach lengths of 15 inches and may live up to 14 years. Most females become sexually mature at 2 years and 5 to 6 inches. The mature female, or intermediate stage, ranges in size from 5 to 12 inches. About 5% of these wrasses change their sex in Southern California. The transition occurs at a length of about a foot, according to some sources, although others report it at 5 to 6 inches, which may suggest confusion with the sexual maturation of the females. The two rock wrasse here seem to be facing off. They do not seem to engage in ritualized territorial defense like the sheephead. Spawning occurs between June and September, with a July peak in our waters. Apparently there are two different modes of reproduction that depend on size. One source states that group spawning appears to be dominant in fish less than 8 inches long, but this suggests females transition to males by this size. Note the number of males swarming with females in these segments. Here you can see a female suddenly dart upwards in the water column, followed by the males. In this enhancement, you can even see the cloud of gametes they've released. The larger terminal phase males, longer than 8 inches, apparently court an individual female and prefer to pair off to spawn. These fish are not caught very often by recreational fishermen due to their small mouths. Sometimes it pays off not to have a big mouth. Although the last wrasse in our local group is commonly called the senorita, I have a sneaking suspicion that about half of them may actually be seniors instead. Known scientifically as Oxygilus californica, this cigar-shaped fish also has large scales and buck teeth like the rock wrasse. The body color has been described as yellow to orange or brownish, with some pinkish in color. Senoritas have a characteristic black blotch at the base of their caudal or tail fin. Individuals reach nearly a foot in length and live for about 7 years. This wrasse is found from Salt Point in Northern California to Cedros Island off south-central Baja California in Mexico. However, during colder water periods, they are rare north of Point Conception. Senoritas have been observed down to 320 feet and are most common above 70. They are said to prefer rocky reefs or clumps of algae, but I frequently see them over sandy bottoms and in mid-water, as well as foraging directly under the kelp canopy. These fish are encountered in small aggregations, paired off, or solitary. Like their other local wrasse relatives, the senorita is strictly diurnal. About 15 minutes after sunset, they dive headfirst into coarse sand and remain there during the night. The juvenile senoritas are often seen in schools, which may be fairly large. Such behavior helps protect the small fish from predators. Most become sexually mature at about 1 year and 3 inches in length. Unlike their other local wrasse relatives, senoritas do not undergo a sex change. Spawning occurs from March to October, peaking from June to September in both central and southern California. The swarms of senorita you see in these segments are probably related to mating activity. Eggs are fertilized externally and drift in the plankton, as do the larvae once they hatch. They have been observed up to 300 miles offshore. The young'uns appear in inshore waters from June to November. Young senorita feed on plankton such as copepods and ostracods, while the older ones pick amphipods, barnacles, hydroids, bryozoa, and other encrusters off kelp and smaller algae. Here you see them feeding on encrusting invertebrates on kelp blades up in the canopy. Senorita are the most common cleaner fish in Southern California. They generally feed on parasitic copepods and isopods on the fish they clean. Host fish may include the ocean sunfish or mola mola, giant kelpfish, local damsels of the fishy kind, surf perch, bat rays, and even the giant sea bass. Human damsels, dressed in neoprene, may get the same treatment. It is very common to see tight purplish-blue balls of blacksmith, a local damselfish, bunched together to solicit cleaning by a solitary senorita. One blacksmith begins this by drifting head down with stiffened fins to attract the cleaner. Other blacksmiths quickly join the group, but are often disappointed, since senorita also appear to lose interest in cleaning other fish fairly quickly. I have often observed them cleaning Garibaldi, and they frequently enter the orange damsel's territory as the male is defending his nest. In this sequence you can see a senorita delicately clean gill parasites off a giant kelpfish. The kelpfish opens its operculum or gill cover to give the senorita access to its gill cavity. Of course, such a peck can be painful in this sensitive area of the kelpfish's body. They also clean other hosts, including sargo, opali, rubberlip sea perch, as well as schools of baitfish like top-smelter jack mackerel in the upper water column. Of course, in the mutual eating society, most species get munched by something above them in the food chain. These fish are notorious bait stealers, so few anglers catch or keep them. However, Brandt's cormorants and California sea lions will include them on their menu.